Don't you dare. You're not stealing Nora's work again. I froze outside the glass conference room, holding a stack of reports against my chest. Ethan's voice had just echoed loud enough to make the nearby interns look up. My stomach twisted. You're mistaken, came Vanessa's voice, cool and composed, like always. I've spent months nurturing the Ventratech relationship, Nora simply presenting my vision. I exhaled slowly and stepped inside. Ethan looked both furious and relieved. His navy blazer was wrinkled as usual. Across from him stood Vanessa Clark, our freshly minted regional director. Her pencil skirt and designer heels screamed authority, but her expression was pure calculation. Nora, Ethan said, perfect timing. Tell Vanessa who actually developed the Ventratech proposal. My name is Nora Blake. I'm 34 and have been climbing the ranks at FleetLink Systems, a mid-sized logistics software firm based in Denver, Colorado. We specialize in streamlining supply chain operations, boring to most, but vital to our clients. I started here in 2016, fresh out of Colorado State with a business degree and zero connections. Promotions came slowly, respect took even longer, especially from people like Vanessa. We were just aligning on the Ventratech project, Vanessa said, smoothly shifting tone. I'll need your analysis notes by close of business so I can polish the final pitch. I met her gaze. Calm. Unblinking. It's already finalized, I said. The proposal's tailored around the integrated logistics system I designed after months of direct consultations with their team. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Well, I'll still want to review it thoroughly. This contract is critical. Losing it would be disastrous. I nodded. $60 million, 0 cents over 6 years. I know exactly how important it is. What I didn't say? I'd been chasing this client for nearly 11 months. I'd flown to San Diego 5 times. I'd stayed up more nights than I could count, optimizing every line of code in our system's demo build, identifying gaps in Ventratech's infrastructure, and earning the trust of their decision-makers. As Ethan and I left the room, he muttered, "She's going to try and cut you out of the final presentation. You know that, right?" I gave a tired smile. Let her try. Melissa Graves won't sign anything unless I'm in that room. Vanessa didn't know, and neither did anyone else at FleetLink, that Melissa, the CEO of Ventratech, had been my roommate during undergrad at Colorado State. We shared a shoebox apartment off campus for 2 years, swapping textbooks, ramen recipes, and late-night breakdowns during finals week. We still caught up for brunch whenever she visited Denver. I never used our friendship to win the deal. That would have crossed a line. But it did help me get in the room when it counted. Back at my desk, I spotted an email from our CEO's assistant. Please confirm attendance at tomorrow's executive strategy session at 9 o'clock IMing. My pulse quickened. Something about that subject line made my skin prickle. The executive boardroom was never a place I felt welcome. The walls were glass and the judgment sharper. Everything in there gleamed. The table, the windows, even the people. Denver's skyline sparkled behind them like a stage backdrop. My off-the-rack blazer suddenly felt like armor made of paper. I sat at the far end of the table, surrounded by FleetLink's power players. Mark Denton, our CEO, wore his usual silver tie and analytical expression. Vanessa Clark was seated beside him, already flipping through a leather-bound portfolio like she owned the place. 4 other execs, all male, all polished, barely acknowledged me. "Nora," Mark began, "Vanessa tells me you've led the Ventratech initiative to the final phase." I nodded, opening my notes. "Yes, we're set to sign next Thursday. Full system integration, multi-domain rollout. They verbally committed to a 6-year, $60 million, 0 cents agreement." Mark raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "That would be the biggest contract in FleetLink's history. Well done." "Thank you," I replied, pride stirred in my chest, but so did apprehension. Vanessa leaned in. "Of course we do have concerns about scalability and long-term account strategy." I blinked. "The entire proposal is built around their enterprise model. I've worked closely with their IT and logistics divisions. Every gap is accounted for." Vanessa gave a rehearsed smile. "It's not just the tech. A client of that size demands delicate relationship management." My jaw tightened. I'd seen her play this game before, cutting in at the 11th hour to grab the glory. But this time, it wasn't just any deal. I've been managing the relationship for nearly a year, I said, keeping my voice steady. Melissa trusts me. That trust isn't transferable. Melissa, Miss Graves, specifically requested that I oversee the implementation, Vanessa said, with a cool smile that never touched her eyes. Of course, Nora, your foundational work has been exceptional. No one disputed it aloud, but they didn't have to. The quick glances between executives, the way Mark Denton, our CEO, refused to meet my eyes, said everything. We just want to ensure our flagship account gets the most seasoned leadership, Vanessa continued. I'll be stepping in for the final negotiations and contract signing. 6 years. That's how long I'd been with FleetLink. I'd missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and poured myself into a deal that would redefine the company's future. And now, just as we approached the finish line, they were quietly removing me from the picture. Is there a concern about my performance? I asked, voice calm but tight. Mark finally looked at me. Not at all. You've exceeded expectations, Nora. But as we scale, we need to be mindful of the image we present to enterprise clients. Vanessa brings a level of Fortune 500 experience that, well, you simply haven't had. He didn't need to say the rest. Vanessa had a Harvard MBA, a Rolodex full of high-level contacts and polish. I had a CSU degree and a spreadsheet full of wins. Apparently, that wasn't enough anymore. The following week passed in a haze. I smiled when I had to, trained Vanessa on every detail of the Ventratech deal, handed over my files, my insights, even drafted her talking points for Monday's signing. I played the game, even as the sting of betrayal lingered under every breath. Then, Friday afternoon arrived, and with it, a calendar invite from Mark. Another executive session. This one had HR copied. I stared at my screen for a full minute before clicking accept. The boardroom felt colder than usual when I walked in. A single manila folder waited in front of my chair like a final insult. Mark began without preamble. Nora, thank you for your contributions to FleetLink. As you know, we continuously evaluate our organizational structure to prepare for future growth. I stayed silent, listening to the corporate script unravel. And as part of this realignment, the business development department will be undergoing restructuring. Effective immediately, your position is being eliminated. 6 years, gone in a euphemism. I see, I replied, voice steady. Why now? Just days before we close the largest contract in company history. This isn't about Ventratech, Mark said. But we both knew the truth. It absolutely was. We need to elevate the team's credentials as we move into enterprise growth mode, Mark said carefully. You mean you need people with fancier diplomas? I replied, my tone flat. His jaw tensed. We need leaders with elite academic backgrounds and a record of enterprise-level exposure. His eyes flicked, just for a second, toward the CSU diploma that was now packed in the cardboard box beside my feet. Vanessa leaned forward, voice smooth as ever. We're prepared to offer you a generous transition package. 3 months' pay, full benefits, and a letter of recommendation. How thoughtful, I said, the bitterness finally rising, my cheeks flushed with a heat I couldn't control. 6 years, and that's what my work was worth? A tidy corporate send-off and a template letter. The HR manager, Susan something, I think, pushed a manila envelope across the table. Everything you need is in here. We'll collect your badge and laptop before you go. I looked around the room, trying to find even 1 ounce of sincerity or gratitude in their expressions. But all I saw was discomfort. Relief that the hard part was over. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, rising. I kept my voice steady, my chin high. No speech, no breakdown, no begging. Just silence. As I packed up my desk, Ethan lingered by the entrance. His expression was pure disbelief. This is absurd. After Ventratech, after everything? I gently wrapped my framed diploma in bubble wrap. It's fine, Ethan, really. It's not fine you landed a $60 million 0 cents deal, and they fire you before the signing meeting? This is theft. I gave him a small smile as I sealed the last box. They made their choice, and come Monday morning, they'll realize exactly how wrong it was. What do you mean? I shut the lid with a quiet snap. Just wait and see. Monday, 9:30 a.m. I was at home in my favorite hoodie, sipping coffee and casually scrolling through job alerts. My phone buzzed. Oh, Melissa Graves, heading into the lion's den. Wish you were here, brunch this weekend to celebrate? I smiled and texted back, absolutely, call me after. What Melissa didn't know, what I hadn't told her, is that I wouldn't be in the room. I hadn't mentioned my termination when we caught up briefly over the weekend. Some would call that manipulation. I call it letting the truth arrive on its own schedule. Another text popped up. Melissa, can't wait to work with you on this. I placed the phone down, the knot in my stomach tight but resolute. Showtime was just beginning. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt for not warning Melissa. But a much larger part of me wanted Fleetlink to feel the consequences of their own arrogance. Across town, in the company's top-floor executive conference room, Vanessa Clark was probably arranging her slides, smoothing out her blazer, and preparing to smile for the biggest photo op of her career. Mark Denton would already be there, no doubt ready to take credit for the Ventratech deal. They'd both be grinning, basking in what they thought was a guaranteed win, completely oblivious to the storm about to hit. At 10:15 a.m., my phone rang. Ethan? I answered. Hey. Oh my God, Nora, you are not going to believe what just happened. Try me, I said, casually setting my coffee mug on the table. Melissa Graves walked into the boardroom, looked around, and the first thing she said was, "Where's Nora?" Vanessa tried to explain you were no longer with the company, but Melissa cut her off. She said, and I quote, "If Nora isn't involved, we need to revisit this agreement immediately." I closed my eyes, picturing the exact look on Vanessa's face as the rug was pulled out from under her. What did Mark do? Started flailing, Ethan replied. Something about teamwork and strategy and how they're evolving internal structures. Total nonsense. But Melissa wasn't buying any of it. She made it clear that you were the reason Ventratech was even considering Fleetlink. No you, no deal. A sharp, quiet satisfaction settled over me. I'd left the paperwork unsigned for a reason. Where are they now? I asked. In Mark's office. It's full-blown chaos here. Vanessa's practically spiraling. She called legal, trying to see if there's a way to enforce the verbal agreement. There isn't, I said flatly. I made sure of that. Ethan paused. How did you know she'd back you? I hesitated, then decided he deserved to know. Melissa and I were college roommates. We've been close for over a decade. Silence. Then a soft, almost reverent, "They had no idea, did they?" Nope, they looked at my CSU diploma and assumed I had no powerful network, that I wasn't worth investing in. So what happens now? That was the question I'd been wrestling with all weekend. Did I want to watch Fleetlink crash and burn? Or step in with leverage? That depends on what they do next, I said. I didn't have to wait long. By 11:00 a.m, my phone lit up. 3 missed calls from Vanessa. 2 from Mark. I just smiled. And waited. A message came through from an unknown number. It was Susan, from HR, suddenly texting me like we were old friends. The tone was polite but cracking at the edges. Another followed minutes later, then a string of missed calls. I let it all stew for another hour before finally answering Mark Denton's 4th attempt. Nora, he said, his voice thick with relief, we need to talk. I'm listening, I said coolly. There seems to be a misunderstanding with Ventratech. Ms. Graves is under the impression that you're essential to the deal. That's not a misunderstanding, Mark, I replied, keeping my tone calm. That's a fact. Silence. I could practically hear him taking off his glasses and pinching the bridge of his nose, the way he always did when negotiations started slipping. Perhaps we acted hastily on Friday, he said. We'd like to discuss bringing you back in to oversee the Ventratech implementation. I laughed before I could stop myself. You fired me 3 days ago because I didn't have an Ivy League pedigree, and now you want me back? Because you're about to lose a $60 million 0 cents contract. That's not, he began. Exactly what happened? Don't bother denying it. Another long silence. What would it take, Nora, he asked finally, to come back and salvage the deal? I had spent the entire weekend wrestling with that question. In the beginning, I imagined myself marching back in with a demands list that included a C-suite title, Vanessa's job, and a public apology. But with distance came clarity. Or I didn't want back in. Not to that place, not under those people. Nothing, I said simply. I'm not coming back. Everyone has a price, he insisted. Name yours. VP? Equity? Name it. This isn't about money or a title, I said. This is about respect. And on Friday, you showed me exactly how little mine meant to you. I'll admit we handled the transition. Transition, I snapped. You fired me, Mark. Days before your company was set to close the biggest deal in its history. Because my degree wasn't from Yale or Stanford. That's not. Save it, I cut in. Call it what it is. Elitism. The line went quiet. When he spoke again, the boardroom polish had faded from his voice. Melissa is threatening to walk. The board is in emergency session this afternoon. We're talking $60 million, 0 cents, Nora. That sounds like a you and Vanessa problem, I said. Maybe your Ivy League connections can help. Nora, please, just come to one meeting. Name your terms. Whatever you want. I paused, then smiled. Good, let's talk. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had to prove your worth to people who only saw your resume, not your resilience, then you already know how satisfying this moment is. And trust me, the best part, it's still coming. Stick around for what happens when Nora walks back into the boardroom, this time on her terms. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. You'll want to see how this ends. I thought about Melissa sitting in that boardroom, standing up for me while I wasn't even there to defend myself. I thought about all the nights I stayed past midnight while Vanessa was out the door by 5. I thought about the smug remarks about my regional alma mater, the promotions handed to people with shinier degrees but half the results, the endless loop of proving my worth to people who refused to see it. I'll think about it, I finally said to Mark. Not a no, not a yes, just enough to keep the pressure where it belonged. But in the meantime, you should understand something. Melissa doesn't bluff. If she says this deal depends on me, then it does. I ended the call before he could respond. My heart pounded. The phone rang again right away, but I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, a message from Melissa popped up. These people are unbelievable. They fired you after everything you did to land this account. I'm furious. Call me. Despite everything, I smiled and called her. Nora, she practically shouted, what the hell happened? Why didn't you tell me they let you go? I wanted to see how they'd spin it, I admitted. Whether they'd own it or lie. Well, they tried to sell me some nonsense about restructuring and strategy, but I wasn't buying it. Her voice grew sharper, familiar from our college days when she made up her mind about something. Their arrogance, like I wouldn't notice you were gone. Thank you, I said quietly. You didn't have to stand up for me. Of course I did. You're the only reason we even considered FleetLink. Honestly, their tech isn't the best. We were trusting you to make it work. I hesitated, then asked the question burning in my mind. So, what now? With the contract? Melissa didn't hesitate. That depends on you. If you want me to pull out of the deal, I will. But, I asked, sitting forward. I have another idea. Remember Gregory Wilson, year ahead of us, economics major? Vaguely. He founded Wilson Enterprise Solutions, direct competitor to FleetLink, but way more innovative. They've been trying to land a meeting with me for months. My pulse quickened. Greg's looking for a new business development director, someone who knows logistics software, who's got real industry relationships. She paused. Sound like anyone you know? You want me to go work for FleetLink's competitor? I asked. I want you to interview with them, she said with a grin in her voice. What happens after that is entirely up to you. But yes, Melissa said, if you took the job, and if Wilson's platform meets our needs, I'd be very open to a partnership. Everything snapped into place like puzzle pieces finally clicking. I could join a rising competitor, bring VentureTech with me, and show FleetLink exactly what they'd cast aside. It was the perfect kind of revenge. Quiet, clean, and entirely professional. Send me Greg's contact info, I said without hesitation. Already did. Melissa replied, a grin in her voice. He's expecting your call. 3 hours later, I was seated at a cozy downtown Denver cafe across from Gregory Wilson, founder and CEO of Wilson Enterprise Solutions. He was younger than I expected, late 30s maybe. Exuding the kind of drive that only comes from building something on your own. Melissa speaks very highly of you, he said, after we exchanged greetings. Says you're the most client-focused person she's ever worked with. I believe in relationships over transactions, I replied. Tech evolves, trust does. For the next hour, we dug into everything. His company's roadmap, my background, the shifting landscape of logistics software. Unlike my first interviews at FleetLink, Greg didn't ask a single question about where I went to school. He cared about results, strategy, real value. Here's where we stand, he said finally, leaning in. We're still smaller than FleetLink, but we're growing, fast. Our platform's stronger, more flexible, cloud-netted, better interface. What we don't have yet is someone who can take us enterprise level. Someone with relationships, someone who understands the field, I said. He nodded. Exactly. I'll be direct, Nora. I want to bring you on. Business Development Director. Report to me. You'd have full autonomy over your strategy, equity in the company, and a salary that'll make FleetLink's offers look like pocket change. I blinked. That's quite a pitch. Greg just smiled. I invest in talent. Melissa says you're the real deal. The fact FleetLink let you go? Their mistake. My opportunity. For the first time since the layoff, I felt something real. Not just relief, but pride. I like your approach, Greg. When would you want an answer? How about right now, he said with a playful spark. I laughed. Tempting. But I'd like to see the formal offer first. That said, I'm very interested. Fair enough, he said, standing and extending his hand. You'll have it before the end of the day. We shook hands. My phone buzzed. Another call from Mark Denton. And I didn't answer. But yes, Melissa said, if you took the job, and if Wilson's platform meets our needs, I'd be very open to a partnership. Everything snapped into place like puzzle pieces finally clicking. I could join a rising competitor, bring VentureTech with me, and show FleetLink exactly what they'd cast aside. It was the perfect kind of revenge, quiet, clean, and entirely professional. Send me Greg's contact info, I said without hesitation. Already did, Melissa replied, a grin in her voice. He's expecting your call. 3 hours later, I was seated at a cozy downtown Denver cafe across from Gregory Wilson, founder and CEO of Wilson Enterprise Solutions. He was younger than I expected, late 30s, maybe. Exuding the kind of drive that only comes from building something on your own. Melissa speaks very highly of you, he said after we exchanged greetings. Says you're the most client-focused person she's ever worked with. I believe in relationships over transactions, I replied. Tech evolves, trust does. For the next hour, we dug into everything. His company's roadmap, my background, the shifting landscape of logistics software. Unlike my first interviews at FleetLink, Greg didn't ask a single question about where I went to school. He cared about results, strategy, real value. Here's where we stand, he said finally, leaning in. We're still smaller than FleetLink, but we're growing, fast. Our platform's stronger, more flexible, cloud-native, better interface. What we don't have yet is someone who can take us enterprise level. Someone with relationships, someone who understands the field, I said. He nodded. Exactly. I'll be direct, Nora. I want to bring you on. Business Development Director. Report to me. You'd have full autonomy over your strategy, equity in the company, and a salary that'll make FleetLink's offers look like pocket change. I blinked. That's quite a pitch. Greg just smiled. I invest in talent. Melissa says you're the real deal. The fact FleetLink let you go? Their mistake. My opportunity. For the first time since the layoff, I felt something real. Not just relief, but pride. I like your approach, Greg. When would you want an answer? How about right now, he said with a playful spark. I laughed. Tempting, but I'd like to see the formal offer first. That said, I'm very interested. Fair enough, he said, standing and extending his hand. You'll have it before the end of the day. We shook hands. My phone buzzed. Another call from Mark Denton. I didn't answer. I silenced the call without even checking the screen. Problem? Greg asked, catching the flicker of motion. Not anymore, I said, smiling with certainty. By the time I got home, my phone showed 7 missed calls from FleetLink executives. 3 voicemails, each more panicked than the last. One from Vanessa, one from Mark, one from Susan in HR of all people, and then an email from Vanessa herself, practically begging for a meeting. I deleted them all. Then I opened the offer letter Greg had sent. My breath caught. Base salary double what I was making at FleetLink, substantial equity, a generous signing bonus, a relocation allowance if I ever wanted to transfer out of Denver, but more than anything, it was the title and respect I'd fought years to earn and never received. I signed and sent it back without hesitation. Then I called Melissa. It's done, I said, grinning. I start at Wilson on Monday. Perfect, she replied. I could hear the satisfaction humming in her voice. I just sent FleetLink the official notice. We're withdrawing from the contract discussion. How'd they take it? I asked, pouring myself a glass of wine. Like they'd been hit by a truck, Melissa said flatly. Mark even implied they might pursue legal action. I snorted. On what grounds? We never signed. Exactly what I told him, and I added that we're considering alternative vendors who better align with our long-term vision. I grinned. Let me guess. You're meeting with Wilson next week. Tuesday morning, she confirmed. Thought you might want to join. I laughed, genuinely for the first time in weeks. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The weeks that followed were a master class in poetic justice. I stepped into my role at Wilson Enterprise Solutions the following Monday, full of energy and purpose. Greg handed me the reins. No micromanaging, no ego, just trust and room to lead. My first task as business development director? Finalize the venture tech proposal. Tuesday came. I walked into the sleek Wilson conference room with confidence, greeted Melissa with a warm hug, and dove straight into the presentation. This time, I wasn't just a contributor, I was leading the charge. 2 hours later, we walked out with a signed preliminary framework. $45 million 0 cents over 5 years. Slightly under what FleetLink had pitched, but with far better infrastructure, service guarantees, and innovation baked into every deliverable. Word got out fast. When the industry learned that venture tech had chosen Wilson over FleetLink, especially after I'd been let go, calls started flooding in. Colleagues, old clients, even former competitors now wanted to know, why did you leave? What makes Wilson different? I didn't badmouth FleetLink. I didn't need to. The truth was clear. They let go of the woman who built the biggest deal in their company's history. And the moment she walked away, so did the deal. It became the kind of cautionary tale that executives whispered about at logistics summits and SaaS expos. 3 months into my role at Wilson, I got an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from Ethan, my old teammate at FleetLink. Vanessa was let go yesterday. The board cited the venture tech fallout and failure to retain key talent. Thought you'd want to know. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, quickly followed by concern. How are things over there? I typed. Tense, real tense, stocks down 30% since the venture tech exit, layoff rumors everywhere. I didn't gloat. Instead, I sent back. If you're ever looking for a change, Wilson is hiring. We value results over resumes here. 2 weeks later, Ethan joined my team. He was the first of several talented FleetLink refugees who followed over the next few months, people overlooked for lacking Ivy League credentials, but stacked with grit, loyalty, and results. 1 year after my not-so-graceful firing, Wilson Enterprise Solutions had grown 150%. Our client portfolio now included 3 of FleetLink's former flagship accounts including VentureTech. My team? 15 strong and growing, a vibrant mix of backgrounds, degrees, and ideas. People who'd been told no one too many times, and were now turning that rejection into revenue. I had just wrapped up our quarterly strategy session when my assistant buzzed. Greg wants to see you. I found him in his office, leaning over performance projections with a rare grin. Board meeting go well? I asked, sliding into the chair across from him. Greg looked up, eyes bright. Very. We're on pace to surpass FleetLink in market share by Q3. That's ahead of forecast. It is, and a lot of that is because of you. He slid a folder across his desk. Which is why I wanted you to see this first. Inside was a draft press release. My name? Chief Revenue Officer. Effective immediately. Greg, I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said simply. You earned it. You rebuilt this division, brought in high performers, and signed clients we couldn't even get in the door with before. I smiled, thinking about the glass-walled boardroom at FleetLink and how far I'd come. Then yes, absolutely. As I walked back to my new corner office, my phone buzzed with a text. Melissa, have you seen the news about FleetLink? I hadn't. A quick search gave me the headlines. FleetLink announces strategic restructuring after revenue slide. CEO Mark Denton to step down. Company seeks acquisition partner. No gloating, no malice. Just a quiet sense of vindication. They chose pedigree over performance, optics over loyalty, flash over foundation, and the market corrected them. That evening, I glanced at the framed Colorado State University diploma hanging above my desk. I smiled. Because success isn't about where you start. It's about where you refuse to stop. If you've made it to the end, thank you. Not just for watching, but for seeing me. For years I was overlooked, judged by my degree, ignored in boardrooms, dismissed by people who never saw the work behind the wins. But I've learned something I hope you carry with you. You don't need fancy credentials to be powerful. You just need to believe in your value and never stop showing up. If you've ever been underestimated, passed over, or told you weren't enough, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. I want to hear from people like you, people like me. And if this journey struck a chord, hit subscribe. Not for the drama, but to remind yourself that your success doesn't have to look like theirs. It just has to be yours. Because sometimes the best revenge is building something they can't ignore. And I promise, you can.